I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Commission. Thank you for being here, those of you who are in-house and those of you who are online. So I always start out with a brief introduction to explain what the Affordable Housing Commission is. So I'm going to read our mission, as I always do, so people know. The Athens City Affordable Housing Commission is a commission of city government established to review best practices, investigate community affordable housing models, and identify needs and opportunities within Athens city limits to advance decent, safe, sustainable, affordable housing for all city residents. The Commission is tasked with providing advice and guidance on measures and policies that influence access to and needs within the local housing market. I also want to emphasize, we are not focused solely on low-income housing. That seems to be a misnomer. Affordable housing does not necessarily mean low-income housing. Of course, we do care about that population too, but we want to make sure that we have housing that's appropriate for all income levels so that we can have a rich business community that can hire people, workers, up to executives. We need housing for people with disabilities. We need housing for seniors, etc. So with that in mind, we want to get started. I want to establish quorum, and it looks like we do have quorum. Thank you very much. We have a couple people that may be a few minutes late, but that's okay. It's good. The next thing is the disposition of minutes. Any comments regarding the minutes? Any changes? Okay, does anyone make a motion to accept the minutes of our last meeting?
I move to accept the minutes.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, got that done. We don't have a speaker today, so we'll move on from that. We try to have speakers when we can and it's appropriate. So we're going to move on to city updates. Megan, you want to talk about what's happening with the Planning Commission and anything you've got, and then I'm going to talk about a few things too.
Sure. So just for clarification, the wording on the agenda makes it seem like the Planning Commission is currently considering changes to the short-term rental regulations, and they are not currently considering changes. That item is more related to an internal group within the Affordable Housing Commission that has been meeting, just myself, Solveig, Shay, and also Rob Delich. We met one time a week ago to kind of talk about potentially changing some short-term rental regulations as it pertains to the R1 zone. That conversation kind of spurred from concerns about how short-term rentals, especially if they're non-owner occupied and they are the entire housing unit, affect housing affordability here in town. So that conversation is still ongoing, but I did want to clarify that that conversation is not currently happening in the Planning Commission. Other than that, our next Planning Commission meeting is tomorrow, and we have two different cases, both the affordable housing LIHTC projects that we have heard here by this group within the past month or so. The first one is out on Pomeroy Road, which that did go to council, and council determined that there was an error in some of their filing application materials. So council kicked it back to the Planning Commission to kind of restart that review process. The developer did update their application to be correct, and then they will be proceeding with the case at tomorrow's Planning Commission meeting. The other case is the LIHTC application out on Hooper Street, and that project will have its first case hearing with the Planning Commission tomorrow as well. We will also be hearing from Ohio University as a communication item about a new facility they're proposing. I've not seen documents for it yet, so I don't have much to say on that, but if you're interested in that, definitely tune into the meeting or watch it online afterwards. I think so, yes. Molly said it asked if this was the HCOM facility, and I believe so. Other than that, we did start work with American Structure Point on creating the corridor overlay zone. We're very early on in that process, but we did start that about a month or so ago, and public engagement for that will be happening sometime in February. We're scheduling the dates with them soon. I think that's all I have to update as of right now.
Is the overlay zone just for Stimson Avenue
It would, where we would be creating an overlay zone that can be applied in different places throughout the city, but it's not going to be applied within, like, over the entire city, if that makes sense. And we're using Stimson as kind of a jumping off point there.
Sounds good. All right, I will jump in here for a minute. Regarding the Hooper Street project, just to add a little bit to that, they will be hosting a public meeting to discuss the Hooper project today at the public library from 6 to 7. So if anybody's interested and they're watching, they could go check that out. I think that seems like a wise move on their part. I would like to also mention that since I'm on city council, I can say this, I guess, but I have been very clear that I am supportive of the Pomeroy Road project. I'm not quite as sure about the Hooper one, but I am confident that the Pomeroy Road one is a good one. And I will be there tomorrow with supportive documentation showing that we absolutely need it. I'm going to share that with the commissioners. I'm going to share that with people in this commission and with anyone who's interested. I pulled together a bunch of data that I think should be shared with people because we're getting pushback saying that it's not needed, which definitely is. For every 100 people with low income that need housing, there's 45 housing units, according to a recent report. There's a lot more there that we can talk about, but I'm not going to get into it here. I will share that with people and anyone who's interested. So I'm just going to tell you that. Another thing that came up was Chris Schmiel, who's a county commissioner, sent me a contact with a man named Danny Yahini, who owns Yahini Homes. He is a contractor, and he has shifted from larger homes, and he has been doing this for a long time. He builds small, energy-efficient, movable homes in Athens. And I shared pictures of this and his information. I'm going to meet with him early January to see if by any chance this might be something that could be a tool in our toolbox to add for housing options for people, considering the great need. So again, it's just an exploratory conversation. We shall see, but he's very interested in having conversations, so we'll see what happens. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Project Co-Create. As you recall, the Athens County Foundation has put together 40-some organizations and many additional individuals who are interested in the issue of providing emergency housing for people who are unhoused and are desperate for housing. Of course, we do have Good Works, but they can't come close to filling the need. So what else can we do? And plus, Good Works with their Timothy House does not have emergency housing options. So this is, you need a place at 8 o'clock at night and you don't know what to do. Who do you go to? Who do you call? We're going to try to see if we can figure out how to handle that. This is obviously a complex problem with lots of different kinds of needs by individuals. Some people just are living out of their cars and need a place to stay in their cars and a place to, use bathroom facilities, etc. Other people just need a place for a night or two. Maybe somebody needs bus fare to Aunt Bertha's and they'll be fine, but they don't have the money. There's there's people with mental illness and lots of people who have been abused and need housing so quickly. So we have lots of different options, and this group is looking at a comprehensive view. The most famous right now is the Sunset Motel. They got $2 million in a grant to clean up the Sunset Motel, as we've talked about. I don't have any updated news about where they're at. I've got calls out, but they're still interested in people completing their surveys to find out what people want, what concerns they have, etc., to see, how we can make sure that we're going to meet the needs of the community in a responsible way. Another facet to this is the Conestoga Hut. That is something that the Gathering Place, Ginger at the Gathering Place, has been working on and has a model that's been in the Gathering Place parking lot for a while and is looking at where we can place them right now, there was thought that it would be on West Union at the Ohio Means job site, but that did not pan out, sadly. But there are other promising options that look very exciting. So I think we might actually make this happen. So that's the other thing. The another item on here and is the Ridges and Jim Kaufman, the senior housing, the director of real estate for Ohio University, has been talking to me. Are you by chance him? Okay, good. I was hoping. So he's here. So would you mind talking about this? It's better coming from you than from me if you're comfortable about the status. Do you mind? Yes, could you come to the podium so we can?
As you know, the Ridges development is a very complicated project. I wasn't really prepared to give an update, but I can tell you that we are working through a few administrative things related to the contract and agreement with the developer to get the condominium association finalized. I think we are probably looking at going before the Ohio Controlling Board, probably March or April timeframe. At that point in time, I think we'll be in a better position in terms of once we have Controlling Board approval, we'll be able to lay out next steps in terms of setting a closing with the developer and then establishing a timeline for development.
Okay. And as I understand it, the first RFP is going to be for senior housing. Is that correct?
To be honest, I think real specific questions should probably be answered by the authority, the Community Development Authority.
Yes.
Rather than the university directly. I think there's a lot of information that might come out in January at the next public meeting set. And the controlling board, not controlling board, the Community Authority will be running that and providing information on what will be laid out.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The date of that meeting?
Of that, I can get it to you after this.
And location, time?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, there was a date and time that was a little confusing, so we're trying to nail that down.
Honestly, your email kind of helped a lot because it wasn't even on my calendar.
Okay.
So
The new community authority group or board that meets, they're a representative of this board.
No. I mean, I know them. They're in close touch.
I'm in the process of having the previous director removed from that. I guess it's a process through the city, have myself appointed. So
Right.
I think I'll have a little bit more information once I have access to that group.
Sure. Thank you so much,
Sure,
and I'm
you're
sorry
welcome.
to put you on the spot.
It's okay.
But since you were here, I really appreciate it. Okay, so, and one of the things I really like that he said in his email to me is each member of this development team wants to do it right the first time, and we're close to reaching the next step in the process. So I got the sense from you that you would be interested not only in making sure that this happens in a good way, but that you'd be interested in working with us going forward with other projects, because one of the things that I wrote to you that you may be aware of is that when we had our meeting, the city council members had a meeting with the new president early this year. The first thing that came out of her staff's mouth was, we need affordable housing because it's hard to recruit people. So I thought I ought to get you on board with this and see if we can come up with that, because as a former faculty member at OU, it took me 2 years to find a house. And a lot of people have at least that kind of timeline in finding a house. It's very difficult. So whatever we can do to make this better, I think it's better if we work with the university on it. So, thank you. Yes. Great. And we have to remember that we have in this community, some people say 70, some people say 60, but about 70-30 renters to homeowners. And so a lot of obviously students that, you know, you affect, and staff and some, you know, early faculty members can't afford to buy something. So we have to be responsible about some less expensive rentals and whatnot that'll be easier for folks as well. So we're hoping to keep you on board with that and in the loop. Anyway, so I think that's all on my list. But let's move on to Shay.
I don't think I have anything from the BZA. There's one case that came through at the last meeting, a church property in a residential zone, but not really anything directly related to housing. But it was actually an interesting case to see how these new bulk controls align with not just residential uses in the R zones, but in this case, a church, which is an allowed use in, I believe, all of the R zones, was able to take advantage of these new bulk control changes. And so this is one of the early, kind of examples, I guess, at least that I've seen of these changes being actually used.
That sounds promising. Is it okay if I ask which church?
I don't remember the name of it.
Okay.
Remember the
Rob,
address?
Rob might know. It's I think it's on. Is it on Mill Street?
Oh, is it the Catholic Church?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it Catholic Church?
On Mill Street.
Okay, because my church is going to be coming to you also. Just saying. I wonder if somebody jumped the gun. Okay, that's helpful. Did you get a new person?
There's still a vacancy on the BZA,
Okay.
as far as I know.
Okay, well, anybody wants to be on the BZA, get in touch. We want to make sure we have a full board and everybody's happy. Okay, so I did already talk about emergency housing as part of my conversation, so let's go to committee reports. I want to talk to the nominating committee's done their job for the year, so you're kind of off the hook, which is why, like, Amy's on like 3 committees. Thank you very much.
Overachiever.
Yes, she's great. Anyway, and the new development committee. And before we get to that, I want to bring up that the Athens Board of Realtors has provided us with some information booklets that they put out periodically that actually has some really creative ideas in it. So I didn't have enough for everybody, but I have like 5 of each of the 3 that they have. There's the Communities for All Ages, Generational Trends, Accelerating Housing Supply, Community Support. There's Engaging the Community, and Zoning Innovation. So I was actually impressed with the quality of the ideas and the way they put it together. And so I'm hoping that your individual committees can talk about how some of these ideas might work and what we can do to move things forward. All right, new development committee. What's up?
So we met on December 10th, and this is our second meeting. And we went over the goals and focuses that we had shared, was it 2 months ago here at the Affordable Housing Commission meeting? Maybe last month. And went over those kind of more in detail. And we ended up having a really good conversation about public engagement and how pertinent that is. And we met the day after the Pomeroy Road council hearing. So I think that was a lot of the inspiration behind that conversation.
I bet it was.
Yes. But we talked about how we needed to be a bit more proactive in public engagement, especially as it relates to affordable housing and like specific larger housing developments that this group is, kind of privy to information on early on in the process. And we also talked about how both the community and developers need like more guidance on the process, and especially with public engagement, and just how, I guess, especially affordable housing projects work, and just want to make sure that we clarify some of the misinformation about those projects early on. And then we discussed kind of a need to engage other organizations who are interested in affordable housing or even senior housing projects here in the community in order to kind of garner their support for when these types of housing projects come before the Planning Commission and Council, and just kind of bring the groups that are invested in and would really support these types of projects together through the process. And then kind of towards the end of the meeting, we talked about Oakmont Phase 2 and how that could be a really good larger housing development project, and it's already within city limits and zoned. And so we kind of started talking about what we would want to see out there, and also some of maybe the hurdles that we would have to jump over in order to have that land be developed. And a part of that, a part of the reason why that land hasn't developed yet is because it's required to have a second road connection out to Pomeroy Road. And that infrastructure cost is pretty expensive for a developer to tackle and still afford to do a larger development. And that land has some topography issues as well. So we just kind of talked about how maybe, I wouldn't say like a formal prospectus in a way, but maybe getting some kind of design together to inspire or incite interest in developing that land could be really helpful. And also interested in getting a little bit more of an understanding from this group on the actual infrastructure costs that second road connection would require.
And don't forget, we have the TIF instrument.
Yes.
So that could, I mean, I think the city was very creative in adjusting how you do a TIF. So to help the developer
Yeah.
be able to afford it. So we can put that into a perspective to hand out to people. And here's what we can do to encourage you to build here.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
So-
cool.
That was our meeting essentially, and we made some revisions to our goals and focuses, and so we're working at our next meeting is when we'll hopefully like formally adopt those.
Okay, great. So do you have like an action plan for next meeting? You know, some things that you want to make sure you get done?
Yeah, we haven't scheduled that next meeting yet.
Okay.
In general, we're aiming for like every other month, I guess especially with the holidays. So I could see us meeting again in February once
Okay.
things kind of calm down. And I think the main agenda item will be getting those goals and focuses formally adopted. And I think that's really the only like formalized agenda item that we have right now.
Okay, great. All right. Neighborhood revitalization, we met just before this meeting, which was great. Not everybody could show up, unfortunately. It was kind of I admit, a little bit of a last minute thing, but there were a few of us, and we went over some things that I think were valuable. And that is that, part of what we're concerned about is how can we do a better job of trying to encourage beautification, and we don't mean gentrification, we mean, beautification of the neighborhoods in a more, friendly way. Like, let's see if we can encourage people to kind of build together as a community in a way and help each other out. Not sure exactly how to do that, but I think that could be helpful, like, hey, help your neighbor next door who can't mow their lawn because they're disabled or whatever. Ways of kind of helping each other out. But I had spoken with David Riggs, our code enforcement officer, about some strategies to, and he seems very willing to discuss with us some strategies where we can help him find information about, how many code enforcement officers do you really need? How can we make it more efficient by providing you with information and strategies that could make the work a little bit more efficient that they don't have time to come up with? So we're looking into ideas like that. And also, David Riggs has been talking with the code enforcement officer out in Chansey, who's doing some really creative stuff that I am quite excited about, which, by the way, the Athens Board of Realtors actually provided them with funding to start Chansey's code enforcement office, which I thought was very encouraging. Thank you very much. I see we have a representative back there. Appreciate it, because it's working. And what they're trying to do is trying to find the right paper here so I can read this off properly. Let's see, here it is. So the village of Chansey actually Athens did a great job of this some years ago, but it sort of died off somehow. But the village of Chansey is doing a annual cleanup day and then beautification days. They're trying to provide information to their residents about getting funding and assistance to fix up their homes, which I've had requests for on the west side. I've had people contact me and say, I'd like to fix up my home. I'm trying to do my best, but I can't afford to fix the roof, or I can't afford to do this and that. Well, if there are programs that could conceivably help with that, and Zach and we talked about this, and he said, yeah, there actually could be, and the income isn't so restrictive that it couldn't be. But also trying to pull together volunteers, on a once-a-year basis or whatever, to really accommodate those folks that just don't have the ability to do the kind of cleanup in their yards or whatever that they would be helpful and that they would prefer. So what they did was, and we did a little bit of this for a day earlier this year. It did some, I think, but I think if we could make this bigger, we had some volunteers from Rural Action. They had volunteers from a lot of different places, and they did litter pickup. They supervise youth to do litter pickup. Let's have some students, high school and college students, do some of this stuff. Handling volunteer sign-in and refreshments. I mean, they made a big deal out of this. Plant flowers in the park. They did power washing. They did landscaping. They picked up large trash items. And what we had was giant dumpsters. I think we had filled two or three giant dumpsters out on the west side, trying to clean up the place. And it did help, but this is something that if we did that annually, it could be a big boost to the community. And I'm hoping would make a lot of people happy. And they also provided, which I love, an application for beautification services. I mean, they made this really easy. I think that's great. And so, like I said, David Riggs is working with them to try to find some ways to cooperate with them, which I think is wonderful. And they had an Athens County Home Repair Fair, where they had organizations like HAPCAP, Habitat for Humanity, USDA, and Buckeye Hills Regional Council that provided or could offer programs to assist with repairing people's homes and volunteers to assist. So there's all kinds of educational, instructional information that they can provide people that they may be able to fix their own places with limited resources, but with greater knowledge of how to do DIY. Right? And if you could make it, I sort of envision, maybe idealize, I sort of envision this kind of, like barn raising or quilting bees, where you get together and help each other out and you have a party and have a good time, and actually make some difference in your community, get to know your neighbors and find out what they're up to and, what common interests you have. And, maybe we'd all like each other better. Who knows? Wouldn't that be nice? In any case, that's kind of, and I'm hoping to get OU students more involved with that. I think that would be great, get to know the neighborhoods and understand, learn maybe a little bit about how you do some DIY stuff. When they're adults and have their own place, or that whether it's their rental or where they eventually own a place, they can learn a little bit about how to do some home DIY. I think that's a good thing. Save them some money down the road and, make them feel more competent. I think that's a great idea. I wish somebody had done that for me. So those are some of the things that we talked about, and I guess that's it for neighborhood revitalization, and hoping to talk more. I'm going to explore some ideas for how we can make the code process more efficient, and I'm going to look into some ideas along those lines with David Riggs' permission, and come up with some statistics about what their needs are, so that they can make some even better choices on moving forward. Okay, then we have Communications and Education Committee. Anything new?
I'll add, I'll do a quick report. Polly and I did meet a couple of weeks ago and just talked about what our scope might look like. And so we kind of talked about the first step, even before we figure that out, would be just to answer some questions that we had as far as like any communications, would they need to be approved by the city, who would need to do all of that stuff. So we have questions, but also just looking at, looking at our current messaging on our website, making sure that our messaging is aligned with what's in our bylaws. I think like when you open the meeting with, what is affordable housing, just making sure that all of that is aligned, all of the messaging. And I think that would help all of the members when we're talking about the Affordable Housing Commission as well, just to all be kind of in lockstep with our with our messaging and what we do. And so that's really kind of where we started, just looking at that maybe as a first step, like what our current messaging looks like. And
another thing that we had talked about and sort of started was providing a greater repository
Yes.
of information for
Yes.
people. Like, where do you apply for, home repair funding?
Yep.
That kind of thing.
that
Or,
would be great.
link to the code office for this kind of information. I mean, I think it doesn't hurt to have, multiple places, as long as they link to the same place. It's not that hard to do. That kind of thing. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, like maybe we could, in one of our next meetings, we could talk about a process for how we collect that information, because it seems like we're going to have a repository for that. There's a way for people to be able to tell us about what the resources are.
And you know that Scott, who is in our IT room probably right now, is our website guy.
Okay.
So he's the person to talk to, and
Great.
that'll.
And I'm guessing that none of us would have admin rights, so we need to give him all copy.
Exactly.
Yep.
Then I also want to find out from him the page, what capabilities they are.
Right.
Where we could graphically make it more.
Right.
Sorry. But
I love that.
layout matters.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
And just a way, but I also know there's always constraints within that, right? So I have no idea the constraints of the CMS system.
Right.
So we just need to figure out some technical things. And I also was unaware whether we can add any information we want, or if anything had to be approved by the city.
Right.
While we are independent, we're still not totally in my mind. And so who has final approval on messaging?
It's my understanding that city council's in charge of that process. And so unless we do something really terrible, I think we have a lot of latitude.
Okay, but it'd be good to have that clarified.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess as a committee, would you want to report out to the larger commission on
Yeah.
the messaging, and then
Yeah, I
could
think
have,
there should
like-
be a mock-up. I think
Absolutely.
everybody should be able to see like what that looks like and what's,
Right.
being discussed. And then just having the clarity of who does have final say of what actually goes on a city website.
Right.
Because it is still the city's website.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. No, I think that's great. I love that. And you're following the right procedure and all that kind of stuff. So that's very good. Any comments from the audience about any of this? Anything you want to add, comment, suggest, complain about, whatever? Have to open the door. Yes. Michelle is our consultant and a founding member.
So Athens Beautification Day is what it was called prior to, many of you may remember, prior to COVID. And then it kind of fell apart during COVID. So there's already a model out there, the city
Right.
mayor and the president of the university would open it up that day in April, I think it was. And, all these teams would go out and do all this kind of things. So, there is a model out there and it worked great. And how
Yeah, I
many
don't know
years did it
who's
run?
got the model.
15? I mean, every year it was an annual
find out.
event.
Yeah.
And of course, there's all those students who need their hours for, like if you're in the, which college is it? University College, you need so many hours and things like that. There was always a ton of students available and to go do different things.
Right.
So I don't think it's a matter of reworking the wheel on the beautification thing. I like the DIY. I think that's good.
Michelle, quick question about the beautification day.
Yeah.
Did it usually time up with Earth Day? Because I know there are a lot of
There
volunteer.
was some Earth Day, but
Okay.
in the spring there's so many events because the International Day happens that weekend, so it couldn't be that day. There was like maybe 1 or 2 days that it could actually happen on a Saturday. So I don't know if Earth Day worked out or not. I don't remember when Earth Day is.
But I think that we probably ought to start revitalizing that now.
Absolutely.
You know,
if somebody
so-
from the university and somebody wanted to do that, I mean, maybe
They
I
still
could.
do it. They have it as a month-long event. And people can submit projects that they want to do, like community organizations can submit projects they want to do, and they have it over, but it's not like a one day, everyone come together. It's more
What office runs? What office?
Office of, or Center for Community Engagement.
Center for Community Engagement.
Would you mind
Yeah, I'm
finding
writing.
out everything you can?
Right.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah.
So you'll report on that next
Good
month?
homework.
Yes.
I
Amy.
have a quick thing to add that's sort of related to that. The West Side Neighborhood Association did a couple of events pre-pandemic. They called them quick picks. And so a bunch of us would just like walk through the West Side with garbage bags. The mayor came, he supplied garbage bags and the grabbers, and we just walked through the West Side for 2 hours on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
And just cleaned up trash wherever
Yeah.
we saw it. It was no big deal. You know,
Right.
12 of us came. We probably did like 5 or 6 of those events.
Right.
They were kind of fun.
Yeah. No, it's a nice way to get to know your neighbors
Yeah.
for sure, especially for the closed-in neighborhoods.
Yeah.
It's important. Also, the realtor thing, I did go. Those books are online. I mean, the articles and everything are online with the National Realtors Association. So you can look up those great ideas. Yeah, and I also welcome our new OU real estate person. I appreciate that too, because when we first had the first task force 10 years ago, when we started it, there was the real estate person was on that task force, and that was really important. So welcome to Athens.
Yes, we do have a representative. Megan, and I've completely lost her last name. Vogel, that's right. Thank you. Megan Vogel, who's signed. Unfortunately, she's not here today. So, anyway, let's see. Other than that, is there anything for the good of the order?
I have one thing on the subject of beautification as well as kind of home maintenance and filling those
Okay.
gaps.
Great.
Some of you might already be aware, but there's a new organization, relatively new, started by Amy Renner, Mayor of Chansey, called Helping Hands of Southeast Ohio. And I think their kind of mission statement fills kind of a gap in focusing on home repairs on a sliding scale, including down to no cost for a lot of upgrades that are typically overlooked. And they're pretty flexible, but some of that work to date has been installing ramps for accessibility into homes, grab bars, as well as more general things, checking smoke detectors, safety items. And so I think, if anyone, I brought some brochures, if anyone here, I think whether your organization or individually, knows of people who might be interested in those services, I think they're kind of filling the gaps that I think a lot of existing organizations maybe don't have the availability to do the types of services, including like lawn care, power washing, things like that. So, really any kind of small repair or maintenance items that aren't already covered by like HABCAP or some of these other programs.
Yep.
There's a Facebook page and a website. Yes. You can take some of these, go on.
Zach, were you familiar?
Yeah.
Hey, Zach, were you familiar with this, or
No, this is
and
literally-
and this would be helpful to the people you
Yes.
serve? Okay. Yeah, if we can put the website. See, this is the kind of stuff I'd like to see on ours. The link
Yeah,
on our
I made a
website.
notation.
Yeah, I think that's great.
And I had a question about that. Is that for anybody, or are there certain, like, what are the qualifications? It was my understanding
Yeah.
that maybe that was for a certain age, older people.
That is a good question. I think that is part of. Does it?
It says the minor home repair program. This homeowners age 60 plus
60 plus.
are disabled with.
Or disabled.
And I don't know if that's a hard rule or not.
Yeah.
So I think right now there's a lot of flexibility in how the funds are being used, and so I don't know that anyone who doesn't fit in that age group would be excluded. I do know there's a sliding scale
Yeah.
that's income based. So I think that there's an option for, you know, paid services on a sliding scale as well as fully, you know, basically free repair services for people who meet the income requirements.
Well, I know for people even with a little bit more money than maybe would rather have someplace they trust because they get ripped off.
Yeah.
So they might be able to be willing to pay a little bit more, but if they felt safe, that would be a huge thing.
Yeah. And there's already been a very positive reception to, you know, the projects that have been completed. I know several have been in Chansey, but you know, Helping Hands has also got funding to move into Hocking County as well. So yeah, there's some kind of new pilot, you know, kind of things. But I believe all of the projects so far have been in Athens County.
Okay. Well,
There are multiple grant sources, you know, basically just grant funding, which I don't, you know the specifics of, but yeah, grants, there have been grants that have come in from different local and state sources, I believe.
One of the grants I know came from a healthy aging grant that flowed through the county commissioners, and one came through Hopewell Health Centers through some of their safety and falls prevention.
Thank you.
oh, that's
So
great.
I do know where 2 of the grants came from.
And then
Because she works there.
some of the newer funding is more
Yes.
like buckets for specific communities, like Nelsonville, Hocking County. There may be some other. So there's some of the, you know, some of the funds are for specific neighbor or specific areas, and some of them are not.
Interesting. Okay. Any other comments from anybody here?
I know it was mentioned, Megan mentioned about the getting public opinions about things, and I think Polly also mentioned about having those communications on our website. But I'm wondering, how do we actually engage the community I don't know if you came up with any solutions on that. Yeah, it's good to like put things on the website, but how do we like really engage the community? Like, I represent renters, but you're only hearing my voice at this table, right? Like, and I don't know how to like get the word out. I know you had a presentation that you did with City Council about our committee, but are there other thoughts or ideas? On
Well, I mean,
how-
that's something that we can choose to do, you know, have something at the library or whatever, and explain what we're going to be talking about and see who shows up. You know, we do have 3 newspapers in town, and, you know, we do have Facebook, for good or ill, that we can put stuff on. There's word of mouth in this relatively small community, so I think there's community organizations like the West Side Community Association. There's East Side has one. There's others. So there's ways of getting out there and talking to people to let folks know what's going on. I think it's smart of Tidewell, whatever their name is, to yeah, to talk about their project. That might have been a good idea for Aspire to do the same, but in any case, we are where we are. So, but yeah, having been a social work professor and doing research and gathering information, I can tell you, I'm a huge believer in the importance of engaging the public and stakeholders and anybody else who's going to be affected, so that you get those things on the table first, rather than trying to jam something through and then convincing people that you did the right thing on their behalf.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get it out when people are right now not interested in the topic, or I think people come when there is a problem and listen to it, but not when and so the presentation you did to City Council, I wonder if that could be turned into a news article or something, and put to just kind of inform people like that we exist, or this is what our mission is, and
New development, we talked about that too, just be more proactive.
That's what I was going to say.
Ahead of it.
Yeah, we talked about
Yes,
that.
getting out ahead of it.
Yeah, and I think like I remember from our discussion, we talked about doing some kind of like a housing forum or an open discussion just about the process, and I think even talked about some of the like reaching out to neighborhood associations and just like getting people who are following this to just to understand the process, just so that the information out there when people talk to each other is.
Well, I think the Chansey Fair Housing Day or whatever, where they had all these organizations.
I went to that.
I think that's great.
It was wonderful.
I
Yeah,
love that.
I attended that.
I would
They
love
had
to
a
have
great
us do that
turnout.
here. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how, I mean, I think we ought to be thinking about it.
Yeah.
Maybe next month we can start planning it in more detail, but yes.
What about the Athens Co-Create? Are any of you on those Zoom meetings? So
Yeah.
Amy, okay. So, I mean, I think that's another great place because housing, yes, they're focused right now on helping the unsecured housing population, but there's so many people involved with that, that seems like another great place to, weave in this other group that's working on
Yeah.
the issue.
It's my understanding that that group came together and the first project that they're tackling is the emergency housing. But I don't think that there's any sort of, no one's talking about like, we did this thing, we're done. I think it's a longstanding
Yes.
group that is going to continue to work on all different projects. This is just the first focus.
Right. So, I mean, I can talk with Carrie Pigman, who's
Yep.
executive director, about here's some of the things that we'd like to talk about.
Yep.
And when you're ready, or how can we weave this in somehow? Because again, one of the things with the emergency housing is we're not just looking at one solution, we're looking at what are the vast umbrella of things we can do short and long term to help people with housing. So anyway, thank you for all that. All right. Rob, surely you have something to say. You usually do. Okay. All right. Well, we can do that. That's all I have on the agenda right now. So we could end a few minutes early.
Wow.
Are you okay with that? Happy, yes, after all, Christmas and Hanukkah and whatever are around the corner, so we could just go home and have a good time, and I'm hungry, so. All right, well, thank you so much. Yes, so, motion to adjourn.
Polly
Second. Yeah, somebody told me yesterday that officially, if you do a motion to adjourn and somebody says second, that you can quit then. I don't know if that's
Yes,
true, but
that
it
is
sounded,
true.
is that true? Okay, so we're done.